and welcome to American Friction, the US politics podcast that isn't going to start speaking like Trump anytime soon. People are telling me, everyone is telling me. I'm Jacob Jarvis.
And I'm the bigliest, the greatest ever Chris Jones. Gavin Newsom's popularity and support to be the Democratic presidential nominee come 2028 has surged over the past few weeks, hasn't it, Jarv?
It has, Chris. That's right. And it comes after the California governor upped his public anti-Trump rhetoric over the past few weeks, even mocking him with Trump-style all-caps tweets. What a nasty thing to do. Could Newsom be the answer to the Democrats' leadership woes post-Harris? Probably not, but we're going to talk about it anyway.
We will indeed. And joining us to talk about all of that is the Independent's Washington bureau chief, Eric Garcia, who last week wrote an article titled "Aggressive Insults Grabbing All the Headlines. Gavin Newsom is trying to be a Democratic version of Trump. Will voters buy it?" Eric, we're glad to see you back on the show. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
It's good to be back, fellas. How you doing?
Pleasure to have you with us. Eric, you've written about Newsom lately. Is it fair to say, that has he been leading the line for the Democrats over the past few weeks, or is he just the best at being an attention seeker, basically? Is he just the best self-publicist?
Are you asking me if he's just an attention whore?
Pretty much.
That is the best way to say it. So I mean, I've a background. I grew up in California. I spent most of my childhood in Southern California. And it's always been fascinating the way that Gavin Newsom, in some ways, I think his political superpower and his Achilles heel are the same thing, which is he tends to have his finger on the pulse of wherever the Democratic Party is going, maybe not where they are now, and move that way. So I think that when Kamala Harris lost, and he and Kamala Harris have a very complicated relationship, we could talk about that later, he really thought that he could kind of be the next guy in line. He's the governor of the most populous state in the country, or the most populous Democratic state in the country, I think like the fourth largest economy in the world. He is from San Francisco, and I think that I think for a while he tried to pivot to the center because he tried to do that. But then what happened was when Texas tried doing its redistricting to shore up Republican seats, he felt that he had the ability to do so because even though California has an independent redistricting commission, they could have a ballot initiative to squeeze out more votes. And just because California is so damn big, and because it has all this media attention, all these media markets, he just kind of seized on it. And I think that so when a lot of people are talking about Gavin Newsom, they just like that he's fighting, because I think think about it this way. For the past decade, Democrats have been calling Trump a fascist. And even some Republicans have been calling him a fascist. And then you saw Democrats kind of warm up to him when he got into office. There was famously at Jimmy Carter's funeral, him and Obama were yucking it up. And then a lot of Democrats voted for his immigration legislation. They voted to confirm a lot of his nominees. And a lot of Democratic voters were like, what the hell? And so, and given leadership in Washington has to do certain things, and Democrats for the longest time have been the party of governing, but then I think that governors have a unique ability to fight back. And then I think even before the whole redistricting thing, it was really when Trump sent troops to Los Angeles, that was really when the Winter Soldier Code was activated in Newsom. And he was just and he's just very good at being on the offensive. And, and ironically enough, if you look at his polling, polling started to jump after that. And his polling with Latinos started going up. For those who know me know I've written a lot about Latino voters. So he just knows where the party is going, even if they're not there yet. And then I think in this case, he thought, okay, we've been trying to play by the rules for the last 15 years, having nonpartisan redistricting, and Republicans have just gerrymandered the hell out of their states. So we're taking the gloves off and we're fighting fire with fire. And I think that a lot of Democratic voters just really like that. So there was literally just this week, I was logging on, I was reading a poll from Politico that showed that a majority of Democrats nationwide hate partisan redistricting, but they support California doing it to counter Texas.
Is he just getting this much attention, though, as well, partly, Eric? Because I see people like AOC is filling stadiums across the country, and no one seems to be talking about her so much. And then Zohran Mamdani, for example, the New York Times and the Washington Post seem to not be particular fans, let's say, and the sort of Cuomo is still getting fronted there. Is Newsom in a weird space in that he is breaking from the playbook in how he's going at Trump, but he's also fortunate to be palatable enough to the institutional Democratic Party as well? And is that allowing him quite a lot of political space?
Are you saying it's because he's a white man?
Yeah, exactly. White man with flicky hair. He just seems like, looks a bit like a Kennedy.
He looks more like a Kennedy than RFK Jr. does.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the leathery skin.
No.
We talked about RFK Jr. last time.
Fuck that guy.
But the point being is, I think that it's that he's also, I think, look, for better or for worse, Zohran Mamdani got elected in a low turnout primary in New York City. And then also, it's just New York City. And it was because he was running against Cuomo, who had a lot of baggage. AOC, a lot of people love her. A lot of people hate her. She's actually becoming more popular in New York State, ironically enough. She's actually becoming more popular with independents and with and even with like mainstream Democrats. That's an interesting. But she, at the end of the day, she's still a backbench congresswoman. She's still a four-term congresswoman. She's not a chairwoman of anything. She's not. She tried to be the ranking member of the Oversight Committee. And then I think that with Newsom, it's just that, look, he's a governor, and also it's just that I think the other thing is that, for better or for worse, Newsom has been on the national stage for 20 years, going back to when he was mayor of San Francisco. He famously, in 2004, he performed same-sex weddings in City Hall in San Francisco when it was still banned nationwide. A lot of Democrats hated him for that because they thought that, oh, you're making Democrats the party of gay marriage, and they were afraid of that. That was when Bush was doing all those state constitutional amendments to ban same-sex marriage, and he made it a big issue in 2004. And I think also, look, when you're the governor of California, a very populous state with multiple major cities, Sacramento, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, you have such a big economy. You have all the media there. You have the tourism industry. You have the agriculture industry, which people don't realize is bigger than the entertainment industry in California. Yeah. And you have the entertainment industry. You just are going to naturally have a spotlight. And look, I grew up, I grew up in California. Like, I remember when Schwarzenegger became governor, a lot of people were like, can we change the Constitution so he can run for president? And look, Ronald Reagan ran for president. So I think that it's just that he's in the right place at the right time. And then also the other thing is that he's on his way out. He's term limited. So This is really his last gas. So he can really just do, to borrow from Donald Trump, whatever the hell he wants.
With the lessons that other Democrats can learn from Newsom at the moment, there's plenty to get into on the style of how he's gone back. But one thing that I have noticed is that Newsom's getting a lot of credit here, but breaking through the fourth wall for a little moment, he's clearly not the person doing all of the tweets. It's his social media team, and I've seen them getting props, and they seem sort of a bit younger and fresher. Is the lesson here for Democrats really not to act like Newsom, but to maybe get some new blood in their communications teams instead of just using the same people who have failed over and over and have kind of been lingering?
There's that. I think that getting some young blood and getting some younger staff is part of it. But also what I would say is that Democratic voters just want to see someone draw blood. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a perfect example. Let's use an inverse example, who is New York Governor Kathy Hochul. So it's interesting. So this is the Siena College poll. So Hochul has always been kind of unpopular in New York State. She obviously succeeded Andrew Cuomo after Andrew Cuomo was slapping fannies and killing grannies. I'm sure you saw that whole thing. Curtis Lewa said. So in January, Kathy Hochul, 39% of New Yorkers had a favorable opinion of her. 47% had an unfavorable opinion opinion of her. 42% of New York City residents have had a favorable opinion of Hochul, and 41% had an unfavorable opinion. Now, after Kathy Hochul's been fighting Trump on congestion pricing, she got Brad Lander out of prison when he was arrested by when he was trying to help with ICE stuff. Now she's talking about redistricting as well. 42% of New Yorkers now have a favorable opinion of Hochul. 50% of New York City residents have a favorable opinion of Kathy Hochul. So I think the takeaway is that if you just throw a punch, you're going to be rewarded, especially by Democratic voters. And then by contrast, one of the people who's seen his numbers go down is Chuck Schumer. Just consistently. So let's give you. I hate to give you I hate to be wonky on this, but this is important. I pulled up these numbers specifically for y'all. So this is that same poll, Siena polling New York State. In January, 45% of New Yorkers had a favorable opinion of Chuck Schumer. 41% had an unfavorable opinion of him. And Chuck Schumer's been a senator for a long time. He's very much a retail politician. He is the retail politician. And then now 38% of New Yorkers have a favorable opinion of Chuck Schumer. 45% have an unfavorable opinion of him. Among Democrats, 68% of Democrats had a favorable opinion of Schumer in January. Now only 49%. And a lot of that is because a lot of people think that Chuck Schumer just rolls over to Trump.
Yeah.
There was that famous thing where he voted for the continuing resolution to keep the government open in March, when a lot of Democrats in his own caucus were livid. And that was really the beginning of the end for Chuck Schumer. And I think also the other thing is trying to think of a nice way to say this.
If it's about Chuck Schumer, don't worry about being nice. We don't have to be nice about him on the pod.
Well, look, this is the way I'm going to say it, is that Chuck Schumer is in his 70s. He looks like he's in his 70s, and that's not. Look, Father Time is undefeated, and then Democrats just had a crisis last year about Joe Biden. And I think a lot of it is people Democratic voters. It's kind of unfair. It's kind of fair. They're just not going to want old people anymore. They just don't want it anymore. They really just I think that they want some fresher faces. They want some fresh blood. Even though Newsom's been in politics now for God knows how long, he really hasn't ever really held a job. He does look young and vigorous. I remember I was looking through ahead of this. I was looking at old headlines from when he was mayor of San Francisco. They used to call him Mayor McHottie. Jesus. He was married to Kimberly Guilfoyle. Yeah.
Oh, I forget. I always forget.
You brought up that before on the podcast.
It is a crazy connection though, because I didn't realize until
you realised.
Yeah. And then when I realised,
excellent.
I didn't realise.
Good chat, Jarv.
Yeah, you take over, Chris.
Cheers, mate. We've talked about kind of the language on social media, but the language in real life, and actually, you've quoted it already, which perhaps shows the reach that what he's been saying has had. That fight fire with fire phrase that he said. And you could say, this wasn't written by him, it was written by his speechwriters or whatever, but he has said it, and it's fairly aggressive language. How do you think that tone is being interpreted by Democratic voters? Do you think that it is really kind of the tone that they've been craving for ever since the election, really?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that Politico poll, it just shows that a majority of Democratic voters, 70% of Democrats believe gerrymandering is never acceptable, but a strong majority of Democratic voters across the country think Democrats should fight back.
Yeah.
That to me is so interesting that so many Democratic voters don't like gerrymandering, but they're like, you know what? To hell with what Texas did. We're going to, this is in case of emergency, break glass. The one thing I'll say about Texas is that what Republicans in Texas are doing is very short-sighted because they're banking on Republicans having the same appeal with Latinos next year that Trump had in 2024, when what we've seen consistently is that Trump's brand works with Latinos in a way that the Republican brand doesn't. So it could ultimately backfire on them, especially if Latinos just don't turn out for the Republicans, or there's a lot of Latinos are mad about the tariffs, especially in places like Texas, which does a lot of trade with Mexico, and then of course the mass deportations. A lot of Texas Latinos have very complicated views on immigration. Some of them sound outright like Stephen Miller. But I think that a lot of people are just like, you know what? We've played by the rules for the longest time, and this is our nuclear option. And also, I think that the really smart thing that I think Newsom has done is he's framed this not as we're breaking the rules. He's saying we're going to keep the nonpartisan redistricting commission. This is just reciprocal. This is just us doing this in response to what Texas is doing. We're not scrapping the nonpartisan commission, because I think that allows them to say this is a one-time thing. We're doing this in response to what Texas is doing.
I just want to come back to a point there that you said and ask you just to unpack it a little bit, because it's perhaps something, in the UK we don't necessarily understand that much, and that is why is the Latino vote becoming more popular towards Trump, I guess? Why are they moving towards Trump when all of the language points in the other direction?
I talk about this a lot with Mike Madrid, who was a California Republican strategist for Latinos, and then he's now done a lot of work with Democrats. Is that he pointed out, and a lot of other people have pointed out, that like Trump brings in a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't participate in the American political system, just by virtue of him being a celebrity, just by virtue of him being seen as an astute businessman, though he really wasn't, but he played one on television. One of the most interesting things was I talked with Silvia Bruni, who is the Texas Democratic Party chair in Webb County, which is right on the border of Mexico. I think it's like 95% Hispanic. And then one woman told her, she asked why this person voted for Trump, and then she said, "Porque Trump va a darme dinero," which was Trump is going to give me money. So I think that, but more than anything, it wasn't that Latinos moved right; it was that they became disenchanted with the Democratic Party.
Right.
And I think that it's important to remember that Latinos are the racial group or the ethnic group, whatever you want to call it, that is least likely to have a college education. They're very likely to be very working class. A lot of people say, oh, it's because of Catholicism. That's ridiculous, because only 40% of Hispanics are Catholic in the United States of America. In fact, a lot of them are becoming evangelicals. I'm actually a Latino evangelical, though most evangelicals would shoot me. The point that I'm making is that like Hispanics are primarily economic voters. They were the ones who got affected the most by first COVID, because a lot of them worked in service industry jobs. Then they got hit hard doubly by inflation. Even though more Latino men voted for Trump in the last election, Latinas have had the biggest swing toward the GOP in the past 12 years. But now what's interesting is that you're seeing them start to overwhelmingly disapprove of Trump, not just because of the deportations, but and ICE, doing ICE things. I mean, literally, I live in DC, where you've got the jackboots and the cop cars there, but the Humvees. But it's also just because the tariffs eat a bigger chunk out of their pocketbook. They're worried about the economy. They're worried about the cost of living. And Trump promised to lower prices on day one, and he hasn't.
Coming back to Newsom, then, you wrote in your piece that he's offering Democrats their own version of Trumpism. I wonder if you could unpack that a little bit. What does that actually mean? And is it essentially Newsom holding up a mirror to MAGA, and they don't like the reflection?
Yeah, I mean, he does it. I mean, look, let's be real. He's not doing this because that's who he really is. He's doing this to troll Republicans.
Right.
And it gets on Fox News. I remember watching an interview with him one time where he says he watches Fox News every night, which is sicko behavior. Even when I was a night editor, I didn't watch Fox News every night. And I had to watch it a lot. But the other thing, the fascinating thing to me is that, I think that more than anything, this is what I was saying. I was talking with you guys about this before we went on air. Around 2015, when Trump was starting to run for president, I was hearing a lot of people say, a lot of Republicans say, Trump is crazy or Trump is a nut, but I like what he's talking about with immigration. Or Trump is crazy, but I really like that he sticks it to the media. My old mentor, Ron Fournier, used to say, he used to call them the crazy butts. Trump is crazy, but, especially because Ron was from Michigan, he's like, I like what Trump is saying about trade and, NAFTA. And in the same way, I feel like a lot of Democrats, their response is, look, Gavin Newsom sucks because they don't like what he said about trans people when he had Charlie Kirk on his podcast, and he said trans athletes shouldn't play in women's. He said it was unfair that trans athletes are playing in women's sports. They don't like what he's done on homelessness, where he's literally like, I think it was like a few weeks after the election, he literally cleaned out a homeless encampment himself. They don't like what he's done. That, speaking about homelessness, he hasn't really done that much on housing. Which is arguably the biggest crisis for Democrats right now, is that like it's just too damn expensive to live in any blue state. And he's started to do it, but it took him a really long time. And they really don't like what he said about immigration. They think he's focused too much on the national stage. He obviously faced a recall in 2021. He beat it. But they like what he's doing to Republicans. They like it that he's sticking it to Republicans. And that, to borrow back from Joe Biden, like Joe Biden used to always say, when Trump loses, the fever will break. They'll have an epiphany. And Newsom has just said, the fever's not going to break, Let's tear these people to shreds. I don't know if you remember that old Onion headline, like 1980 election, Jimmy Carter, let's talk better mileage, Ronald Reagan, kill the bastards. Like, Gavin Newsom is kill the bastards. To his credit, he did actually walk the walk when troops came to Los Angeles. He sued the Trump administration immediately. He made sure that there were protections for migrants. Also, what's funny about it is he kind of can do what other people can't do. So, for example, let's take J.B. Pritzker in Illinois. Because he's talking now about doing redistricting. The dirty secret is he already kind of gerrymandered Illinois already, so he can't really squeeze out any more seats without putting other Democrats in danger. In New York, Kathy Hochul wants to do it, but they have to repeal the redistricting committee, and they just don't have a supermajority in the legislature, so they got to wait until 2026, and they're hoping that in 2026 they can get a supermajority so that they can repeal the redistricting commission and gerrymander the state. So Gavin Newsom is one of the only people who can kind of do this just by the way the rules are set up in California, and so he's kind of taking advantage of that.
It's an issue for Gavin Newsom, and also just for whenever I see Democrats at the moment either being criticized or being praised, it seems to me it's largely because they're reacting to things. And their reaction either sucks or their reaction is like, oh, fair enough, they've woken up, they're reacting.
Yeah.
Is that an issue for Newsom personally, but it's also just an issue for the Democrats on the whole, that they seem like the only time they ever get their act together is when it's like, Trump's gone so far this time, I guess we better do something, even though he's doing bad shit every single day.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are talking about the takeover of DC. Even though Trump basically did the same thing with Los Angeles. But the other thing is that I think that, look, for better or for worse, Democrats can only react because they're locked out of power in Washington. They don't have the House, they don't have the Senate, they don't have the presidency. So all they really can do is react. And it really comes down to how you do react. How do you react? Do you put out a strongly worded letter? Or do you say that, oh, Trump's latest thing is a distraction from X? Or do you say, no, we're going to punch this guy in the nose? And I think that's why you see Jasmine Crockett was one of the biggest fundraisers this last fundraising quarter. Cory Booker was one of the biggest fundraisers for the last fundraising quarter after he did his little filibuster. Yeah. Well, which really wasn't a filibuster. Sorry, I'm pedantic. AOC is one of the biggest. AOC is one of the biggest fundraisers. What you see now is you see just people. You see John Ossoff is one of the biggest fundraisers now, but that's also just because he's up for re-election. So you see Democratic voters vote because there's not an election until we have a given a governor's race in November in Virginia, just across the river, but and in New Jersey. But right now, the only thing that Democrats can do is vote with their wallets and give money, and so you see that consistently. You know, in that article, I interview Shannon Watts, who was one of the co-founders of Moms Demand Action, gun control group, and she says, "I haven't given to Democrats in a long time, but I gave to Gavin Newsom." So, like, I think that voters just, again, they just want to see someone who's gonna, you know, kick Republican ass, so to speak.
Yeah. With the sort of kicking Republican ass, so one thing we have regularly poked fun at Gavin Newsom for his podcast. One, because we don't.
He deserves it.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need more rivals in the world, but also we don't need people speaking to people like Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk. It doesn't make much sense to me. What has made him? How is that a strategic shift? Does it make any sense whatsoever? And is he still trying to do that? Is he trying to sort of play both sides? Is he still getting weirdo right-wingers on the podcast whilst also doing this?
I'm not a sicko. I don't listen to Gavin Newsom's podcast religiously. I'm a sicko for a lot of other reasons, but like not that. But I think that after the election, I think he was really trying to hear people out. I think he was trying to figure out what the hell happened to the Democrats. Because Newsom, to his credit, when he was being floated when Joe Biden dropped out about if there was going to be an open primary, if he was going to be a candidate. And he, when Kamala Harris became in and they've had a rivalry for going back 20 years, he got on board completely. He's actually really good friends with Tim Walz. And that was like when Walz became the nominee, he was like, hell yeah, I'm on board. But I think when Democrats lost, and they lost in such a apparent fashion, they lost every swing state, they lost the Senate, they didn't get back the House. I think he was trying to figure out what the hell happened, and I think he was trying to a little bit pivot to the center, but it just can't. But because look, when you're a mayor of San Francisco, they're always going to say, "Oh, that's Gavin Newsom." My dad's from Texas. Like they're always going to say, "But he lives in California." And I'm like, "Dad, are you ever going to move back to Texas?" Like, "Oh, they're always going to say, well, he's the governor of California." Yeah. And he's the mayor of San Francisco. So it was never going to work, I think. And I was telling you guys this before we went on the air. I do think that he could very well be like Ron DeSantis if he runs for president, which is to say he's very successful in his home state, but not so successful on the national stage, and he'll melt under the bright lights. Or, he could, who knows? Again, he could be very much like Donald Trump, so, but I think that the podcast thing was him trying to figure out what the hell was going on. But I think that now that he's best, and what one strategist told me is he's best when he's going on the offensive, and he's best when he has to borrow from basketball, when he has the ball. But like, I think that the thing that I've said is that at the end of the day is like, look, the beating heart and the soul of the Democratic Party are older Black voters in the South. That's how you win the primaries. As of right now, I'm not convinced he can win over the aunties. He went to South Carolina like 2 months ago. I'm not convinced he can win over like the Black church ladies in like Charleston or Horry County or Spartanburg. I think it's still an open primary.
Just to finish off, I guess it's probably a little bit too far away to talk about Newsom becoming president. That election's a long way away, but the midterms are a lot closer.
Yes.
Do you think that Newsom right now has the influence to impact how the midterm elections go? And then based off of that, if he does, could you see a presidential campaign from Newsom in the offing?
Well, if this ballot initiative goes through in California that allows them to temporarily redraw the maps, they could get as many as 9 seats, so he would have a direct impact that way. And people would immediately say, if Democrats flip the House and it comes down to California, they'll say, oh, Gavin Newsom gave us the majority. Because a lot of Democrats blamed Kathy Hochul for underperforming in New York because Republicans flipped like 4 seats, and the majority in the House was razor thin. So like, they could say, oh, Gavin Newsom gave us the House. And then, I could see him like making that case and going to South Carolina or going to Iowa or going to New Hampshire, and making that case again. So he could make that case there. But I mean, again, the difficult thing for him is, again, because he has the California label, it's really hard for him to, I don't know, North Carolina and campaign for Roy Cooper, who's the Democratic nominee for Senate, like former governor, very popular, friends with Kamala Harris. Like I'm sure Roy is just like, Gavin, stay the hell away from North Carolina. I'm sure that the Democratic nominee for governor in Michigan is not going to want Gavin Newsom to show up. I'm sure. So like he is really, again, he's very limited. He can't do like the normal like blitz through the swing states, because like when Barack Obama was thinking about running for president around 2006 2007, he was campaigning a lot for down ballot candidates, and he was a monster fundraiser. They actually called him Black Jesus for how much Democrats were calling him Black Jesus for how much money he could raise. So like Gavin could, write a check to Democrats, but I'm sure a lot of Democratic strategists and a lot of Democratic candidates will just want to be like, Gavin, stay the hell away. Stay in California.
And stop making the podcast, Gavin.
Yes, please.
As well. Eric, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, fellas.
And listeners, it's always a pleasure to have you with us too, because there would be absolutely no point in making a podcast if you weren't here. If you'd like to hear more from us, then why not back us on Patreon for about the price of a latte, as it's written down here.
I latte, are you?
Didn't write this script, did I? But for a latte, you get all of our episodes ad-free and a chance to get your hand on some sick merchandise, and it is very cool. How, I hear you ask? Well, it's very easy. Go to patreon.com/American Friction to find out more. There's a link in the show notes. I'm Jacob Jarvis. He's Chris Jones.
I am.
And this is American Friction. Ciao.